Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got some great friends of the show on today. Matt Stoller is going to break down that big antitrust suit against Google. We've got David Dayen on to talk about the importance of universal family care. We've got the Trump campaign on to talk about what the heck they're going to do with less than 2 weeks remaining. But Saagar, you are not here. You may want to acknowledge that. Why are you not in the studio with me?
Yes, I will acknowledge it. I'm having a little bit of a COVID scare. I'm going to go get tested today, so don't everybody freak out. I feel all right, and I will be okay. But before we get to this amazing now that we've gotten through that annoying part, let's get to what's actually important here, which is we got some numbers in from the Trump campaign and the amount of money that they have cash on hand, Krystal, and it is stunning. Stunningly embarrassing, frankly.
Yeah.
They've only got $63 million cash on hand. And just to put that into perspective for everybody, let's throw the next one up there on the screen. This is only slightly more money than Jamie Harrison, who is running for the U.S. Senate in South Carolina, has cash on hand. So they're essentially broke. I mean, cash strapped to the bone. And it's just incredible. I mean, this is a campaign which started raising money in 2017. Where the hell did it all go? It's just rank mismanagement. They're cutting ads in Ohio and Iowa, places which could be tight or at least within several margins of error. So, I mean, it is just stunning to see this.
Well, and there's a few things going on. I mean, first, we've covered here how they blew through almost $1 billion of their war chest before we even really got into election season, spending it on ads in the DC market, which is not competitive, just to boost the president's ego, spending tons of money on Super Bowl ads, again, to boost the president's ego. I think that was before he even knew who his opponent was going to be. So they already were at a deficit. And they have been raising a lot less as we come down the stretch than Joe Biden. And part of that, I think, is just, look, people like to be on the team of the winner. So as these big donors look at the polls, they're diverting their funds elsewhere and trying to create some goodwill with the Biden team that looks like they're about to ascend to the White House. And then the other piece of this is we gave the Trump team a lot of credit for building up this grassroots small dollar donor base. It turns out to have been a bit of a mirage, though, because honestly, they spent, I think the dollar figure, they spent like 77 cents for every grassroots dollar that they raised. So essentially, it was an illusion. They were spending so much money to acquire these donors that it wasn't really amounting to dollars into their bank account. And now as they come down the home stretch, they're having to make really strategic decisions about where they can spend money and where they can't. Joe Biden is outspending them on the airwaves by something like 2-1. And look, I'm a little bit of a skeptic as to how much TV ad dollars really ultimately matter, especially when you're president of the United States and you command whatever media attention you want. However, I will say in this case, because Trump has been so terrible with regards to the message that he's putting out there in the rally we're going to cover later in the show, and like storming out of this Leslie Stahl interview and all of this, if you had the dollars to put up ads that could kind of counter-schedule his own terrible messaging with a more positive image of him, reminding people of some of the things that they liked about him in the first place, it might actually help here down the stretch, and they're just not really able to do that.
I completely agree with that. So last time around, Trump did not have that much money. I think he raised something like over only $100 million or something for his entire campaign. However, he had $2.2 billion in free media, number one. And number two, he had a message which actually resonated. He drove the agenda on cable news. This time around, he's trying desperately to do that, but you can't do that whenever it comes to coronavirus. So you actually do need a massive campaign war chest in order to basically blanket, like you said, counter schedule with your own messaging in each of these key swing states. And that is when the money comes into play. So it's not everything, but it is a lot if you're not able to run the table like he was in 2016. And I thought, Frank Luntz has his own agenda and all of that. But, I mean, he had a call yesterday where he's basically like, look, this is the worst campaign that I've ever seen. And he chalked it up to, quote, political malpractice. pointing to the amount of money that they have, so many of the different boondoggles that they spent oodles on, 77 cents per dollar whenever we're raising. There are some, decent things that they've done. They have a decent ground game, but at the end of the day, in coronavirus times, like, do you really want somebody coming to your door? There's not a lot of research that says anybody does. And second is that they have some decent voter registration numbers, but if that's all you have to show for almost, $1 billion spent over the last 3 years and where we are right now, it's just embarrassing. You need that money in order to make up what we have. And it's not, and this is the thing, like you said, Biden is outspending them 2-1 whenever it comes to official campaign dollars, but they've got oceans of outside money that are pouring in now. Let's throw this up there from Vox. Really interesting. In the final days of the campaign trail, Silicon Valley mega donors are spending $100 million in a new PAC that just was announced. I mean, that's just $100 million from Silicon Valley. There's all these other outside groups in. I mean, Biden might actually be probably the most well-funded candidate to run for president in modern American history. I mean, just so much money. And I mean, a lot of people wouldn't have predicted that going into this. Trump was supposed to have the Death Star and the Juggernaut, and it's just not there.
Yeah, the tables have really turned. I remember, how many times do we have like RNC flacks on here or Trump campaign flacks on here who are touting the war chest and we're so much ahead. They love to come in here and talk about their fundraising numbers. Now the message is, oh, money doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. Just ask Hillary Clinton. Money doesn't matter. And look, there's something to that. But I think it also indicates, first of all, the complete mismanagement of the campaign from top to bottom, from beginning to end, from messaging to the budgeting to the use of funds. All of those things have been a disaster and a mess. And second of all, especially now, as Trump is struggling to raise funds, right? It's not just that they've spent too much. They are now struggling to raise money. It shows you that the donor class has kind of written him off. Frank Luntz, you mentioned that he said this was the worst campaign he's ever seen, just to give people like the specifics of his quote, because this is pretty funny. And Frank Luntz, if you don't know, he's the pollster, the guy that does like the focus group test for Fox News. So this is not like a liberal Democrat guy. I think he doesn't love Trump, but he's the type that will give Trump credit where he sees it. And if his focus groups are reporting that, this was all working out for great for Trump, then I think he would say that as well. He says, this is the worst campaign I've ever seen, and I've been watching them since 1980. They're on the wrong issues. They're on the wrong message. They've got their heads up their asses. Your damn job is to get your candidate to talk about things that are relevant to the people you need to reach, and if you can't do your damn job, then get out. Now, I will say, I don't know Donald Trump well. I've met him like once in my life, but I think he's a pretty hard guy to get to listen to any particular kind of advice. So to blame this on the campaign staff, I'm not really sure is fair, although I don't know that they've made the greatest decisions as well. In particular, Brad Parscale, who's the one who blew through almost $1 billion before he was replaced on the campaign. But the bottom line message is that they are literally doing everything wrong as we come into the home stretch, thinking that Hunter Biden's laptop is going to save them, going after Leslie Stahl, and not focusing first and foremost on the issues that people care about, and with no money to effectively change the subject at this point. You mentioned the Silicon Valley money, also Bloomberg. He's long been out there saying, he's going to put $1 billion into electing Joe Biden. I don't think he's put in quite that much, but he is spending a lot. They've identified Florida as kind of the key here, both because it's a key swing state, one that Donald Trump in particular has to win in order to have a path to the White House, but also because, as we've been talking about here, Florida is one of the states that you will likely know who won Florida on election night and relatively early. So in order to avoid some post-election catastrophe, if Florida goes Biden and goes Biden very quickly, then you're going to have a relatively clear picture of who the next president of the United States is. So Bloomberg is ponying up in Florida to try to close the gap there and make sure that happens for Joe Biden. And it does seem like the polls have moved a bit in Biden's favor in recent weeks. I would still say Florida's a toss-up, but Biden has a tiny bit of an edge if you look at the polling.
Yeah, no, look, that's exactly right. And that's why they're going all in on Florida, because if they can call Florida on election night, it's game over. Trump essentially has no path to victory. And that's one of the things that they've correctly identified. The polls there are very, very tight. And of course, Trump doing better with younger Hispanics, but then the boomers really coming in and saving Biden. If Trump had just won the same amount of boomers as he did in 2016 with his new Hispanic numbers, he would win the state. There's no question about it. So it's like these crazy flip dynamics. And at the same time, you've got President Obama, who's decided to enter the fray, so to speak. He's finally hitting the campaign trail. I mentioned this on the show a couple of weeks ago. President Obama was out there in like June 2016 for Hillary Clinton. It's now only 13 days to go until the election, and he's only decided to come out. It's kind of incredible that he's basically shunning his former vice president in this way. Let's take a listen to what he said in his opening message.
This is really a tipping point, and that momentum only continues if we win this election. In times as polarized as these, your vote doesn't just matter. It matters more than ever before. And to change the game on any of the issues we care about, Joe Biden needs your vote. I know Joe better than almost anybody. I trust him to be a great president. He's different. He's on the right side of the issues. He'll get the job done. And Joe and Kamala will want you to keep pushing them to get the job done. Participate and vote.
So
okay.
This is his message to young people. Personally, I don't know one person who's not already convinced to go out and vote for Joe and Kamala that would be won over by that. I mean, typical of the Biden campaign, he doesn't mention one specific issue or policy choice. It's just like, Joe's on the right side of things and you should vote. But yeah, he's hitting the campaign trail for Joe today in Philadelphia, his first in-person event, 13 days until Election Day. Dramatically different than his approach with regards to Hillary when he was out much earlier and much more often. I mean, the irony here to me, Saagar, is that probably no one is working harder to elect Joe Biden than Bernie Sanders. I bet Bernie, if you tallied it up, has probably done as many events for Joe as Joe has done for Joe. And so, you got Barack Obama jumping into the game late. I don't think that this particularly convinces anyone. But then again, they don't really particularly need to convince anyone. They just kind of need things to stay like they are.
Yeah, that's the most depressing dynamic. No, you're right. I think Bernie's also going to be doing a campaign event with Joe Biden. It's just hilarious, like you said. I mean, Bernie actually has probably done more than Barack Obama in order to get Joe elected, at least.
Oh, it's not even
final
close.
Campaign stretch.
Not even close.
So I mean, listen. If he loses, they'll probably still blame him anyway. But I mean, the man's certainly trying. Man, I can't believe it. 13 days to go. The Trump campaign's got barely as much cash on hand as a Senate candidate in the state of South Carolina. Never thought things would end up this way. I certainly didn't.
Yeah, indeed. All right, we're going to tell you what's on our radars. That's next.